Hey, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. My name is Juliet, and I'm a senior at Carnegie Mellon University, where I study math and statistics. I'm also a student employee of the Korean Professional Development Center, which is why I'm interviewing you today. So, before we begin, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Dani. I run the recruiting team at HRT. I've been at HRT for roughly 12 years. So I've seen a lot of growth from, back when I joined, we were like 40 people total. Now we're like 450 people total. So I've been a part of that journey, which has been great. Um, and fun fact, I like to play volleyball a lot in the pre-COVID times.
That's super cool, and I'm so glad to hear that you got to see HRT grow so much. How did you end up working at HRT?
Um, so out of college, I worked at a third-party recruiting agency. So I've always been interested in recruiting. Um, and then I was like, I want to work with students more. And so I worked in the admissions office of a college.
Mhm.
And then I thought that was a little bit too not technical enough and not fast-paced enough. And so I found, HRT and thought it was the perfect mix of those two things that I was interested in. They also just like there was so much work to be done. When I first interviewed, it was like they didn't have anyone running people ops, they didn't have anyone running recruiting. They didn't, no office managers. It was just like, it was cool to be the first, second employee on the ground on this team. So it was a pretty easy decision actually when I got the HRT job offer.
That's super cool, and I'm really glad that you got a chance to show off your passions while doing this job. So, you've been here for many years. What has your experience been like?
Um, it's been when I first started, I would say that I did a little bit of everything from event planning, some HR, recruiting, office management work.
Mm.
And as we've grown, my role has become more and more narrow. Um, and now I just run recruiting. So it's changed. Like my experiences have gone from doing a little bit of everything and helping with whatever was needed to really focusing on recruiting. And both of those types of roles are exciting. It's exciting to like do all the work, and then it's also exciting to really dive deep and make one part of the picture like, organized and make it run really smoothly.
That sounds really cool. Do you have a favorite memory since you started working?
Oh yeah. So a lot of good memories. My favorite though is we go on a company vacation every year.
Mhm.
And the whole company goes, you bring your plus ones. If you have kids, you bring your family. And maybe like before COVID, our last trip was to Bermuda. And it was the best. It was like 500 of us in Bermuda hanging out. And that was one of my favorite memories. We had like a big dinner on the beach and like a mini talent show. And HRTers are really talented on top of being like really skilled and like all technical things. They're also like musicians and acrobats. And so it was the whole Bermuda experience was really fun.
That sounds so cool. Terrence, someone I interviewed earlier, said that his favorite memory was a trip to Cancun. So,
That was in the early days. Before we outgrew Cancun. That was one of our first trips was to Mexico. It was awesome.
it sounds like you guys have a lot of really great memories.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna jump more into company culture. And as someone in HR, you probably know a lot about HRT's culture. So how would you describe it best?
Yeah. So I would say the culture at HRT is first and foremost like open and collaborative. Everyone's encouraged to ask questions, to learn about what everyone's working on. So it's a very, very open and collaborative place. I'd also say it's research and automation driven. So people here like to work smart. They like to be working on the most like effective solution. They like to debate what that solution might be. So there's a lot of focus on that kind of thing. Um, you know, People like discussing what's the best way to approach this problem, whatever the problem is. So there's a lot of like open discussion around the problems that we solve. And I think the last bit is that everyone here is always trying to learn from each other. So there's just like a lot of curiosity, from me asking a technical person why this is set up this way, from a technical person asking me like, why does recruiting run this way? We're like really open about all of that. And we're always trying to learn what everyone else is working on.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know a lot of CMU students, myself included, really look into company culture when they're deciding where to
Yeah.
work. And your culture really sounds like a college environment where people get to work together and research different ideas and learn from each other.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also a social component to the culture. It's not all technical. If you're into something, there's a group of people at HRT that are into it, and then you'll like find each other and like do that thing, from like board game nights to ping pong tournaments to like technical talks. We have like a lot of social things happening. Obviously, less so right now because of COVID, but pre-COVID, there was like an event every like 2 weeks. So there's a lot of socializing as well.
It's really great. Hopefully that continues on post-COVID as well.
It will.
So what are some of HRT's core values?
I think that like I mentioned them earlier with when you asked about the culture. Um, Collaboration's a big one, transparency, um, automation and efficiency is a big one. Integrity, market integrity is another one. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is another core value. But yeah, everything that like I described earlier with like what our company's culture is, I think if you can extract those into like our company's core values.
Definitely, yeah, that definitely makes sense. Okay, so for our final part, I'd love to learn a little bit more about recruiting. So, does HRT have any commitments to inclusion and diversity?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We're very committed to building this culture and um, building the culture and company of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are doing a lot of cool new things in this space. We're devoting, at a very high level, we're devoting more resources, hiring people to focus on these efforts. So I think that that speaks a lot to how we feel about it. From a recruiting perspective, which is what you asked, we're doing this in a few ways. We're doing more outreach, we're sponsoring more groups, attending more conferences. So we're really trying to increase the diversity of our recruiting pipelines, but we're also reviewing all of our internal recruiting processes and policies to make sure that those are like inclusive and trying to reduce bias in those spaces. So that's just a couple of things that we're doing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely does.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of CMU students and students from all over really are focusing on diversity and inclusion now.
Yeah, for
Glad
sure.
that
And
HR
I was like the first, or maybe like the third woman who worked here, and the maybe first or second like Latinx person who worked here. And it's been really great to see diversity at HRT grow from 12 years ago to now. So
Yeah, that's really great to hear. Okay, so for our final question, what kind of roles do you recruit CMU students for? So you can talk about internships or full-time or just different positions. It's up to you.
yeah, that's another good question. We recruit CMU students for all of the things, like technical and non-technical. I think if you went to CMU, definitely apply to all of our roles. I will say that the roles that have the most openings right now are for full-time and internships for our algo dev team. That's the team that's designing our trading strategies. For our core development team, those are like low-level C++ programmers. And for our systems team, those are the three teams that have like a lot of openings, again, both full-time and internship.
That's super great. I've talked to 2 core developers and then algo developer earlier. So
we actually have a lot of core folks that went to CMU.
yeah, they were all very excited and passionate about how their CMU courses translated into working at HRT.
Yeah.
So
And they love when we go to campus, all the CMU, like the CMU alumni, like they love coming, and we go to Pamela's. It's like a whole thing. We have like a whole routine when we go to CMU.
Do you have any advice for CMU students who are interested in working at HRT in the future?
I think like We like to see folks who've done internships in this space. So I think always apply to internship programs and make sure you have some internships going on. We also like to see cool projects on the side of folks who have like built stuff. Like it's really nice when we meet candidates who are really passionate about technology and like have hobbies that are clearly like, in that space.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's like two things that I would say. And then I think in an interview setting, my advice is always walk the interviewer through what you're thinking. If you change your approach on a technical problem, say those words. Just like over communicate is, I guess, the tip that I would give for interviews.
Thank you. Hopefully that's good advice for students when they watch this video in the future. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.